Good day, class. This is attorney season. Welcome to Human Rights Education. Today, I'll be discussing classification of rights. Rights can be classified according to the following. Number one, according to source. Second, according to recipient. Third, according to aspect of life. Fourth, according to struggle for recognition. And last but not the least, according to derogability. Okay, so let's start. Classification of rights according to source. So number one, we have natural rights. So natural rights are God-given rights. They are acknowledged by everybody to be morally good. They are unwritten, but they prevail as norms of the society. So natural rights are those that are not dependent on the laws or customs of any particular culture of or government. And so natural rights are universal, fundamental, and inalienable in a sense that they cannot be repealed by human laws. Okay? The one can forfeit their enjoyment through one's actions, such as by violating someone else's right. Natural law is the law of natural rights. So examples of natural rights are the right to preserve life. We all know that all humans have the right to stay alive, and no government can ever take that away. This right extends to the right to defend yourself against people who cause you harm. Okay? You are entitled to self-defense. Second example is the right to liberty. So humans have the right to a free life, liberty. You, as a human being, have the freedom of movement, which is freedom from unlawful detainment, and also freedom from thought. And this includes your right to privacy. Okay. Third is the right to own property. So every person has the right to own property. Um, some philosophers, actually, including John Locke, believe that one's ability to own property extended to their ownership of their own labor. Fourth is the right to make a living. So humans have the right to earn money in order to make a living. Next is the right to have a family. All humans, okay, have the right to marry and to have a family. It's your right, it's your natural right to marry and to have a family. And lastly, to practice religion. So everyone's the right to form, okay, to form a religion or to practice a religion of your own choice. And no king, president, congressional body, or ruling power can take your natural rights away. Always remember that. No king, no president, no congressional body or rule making power can take your natural rights away because these natural rights are universal, fundamental, and inalienable. So second, we have here the constitutional rights. Constitutional rights are those rights which are conferred and protected by the Constitution, particularly the 1987 Philippine Constitution, and it cannot be modified or taken away by the lawmaking body, the Congress. So, constitutional rights are the protections and liberties guaranteed to the people by the 1987 Philippine Constitution. And many of these rights are outlined in the Bill of Rights, Article 3, okay, of the 1987 Philippine Constitution. It has 22 sections. Examples are the right to freedom of speech and expression. You have the freedom to speak what you want to speak or to express what you want to express as a human being, provided that that you will not be violating the crime of slander, libel, cyber libel, oral defamation, etc. Then freedom of the press. Okay? Then freedom of assembly. You have the right to assemble. You have the right to petition for redress and for redress and grievances. You have the right to exercise your religion, and you have the right of abode and the right to travel, and also a right to information on matters of public concerns. So all these rights can be found under the 1987 Constitution, particularly in the Bill of Rights. So the Constitution of the Philippines is the supreme law of the Philippines. And we have this doctrine called Doctrine of Constitutional Supremacy. So if ever a law will be passed, okay, that violates the Constitution, such law is void. Okay. And also, the 1987 Constitution of the Philippines was completed by the Constitutional Commission on October 12, 1986, and it was later ratified by a nationwide plebiscite on February 2, 1987. And in the country's history, the Philippines, three other constitutions have effectively governed the Philippines. So number one on the list is the 1935 Commonwealth Constitution, followed by the 1973 Constitution, and then again the 1986 Freedom Constitution, and the recent constitution in the Philippines is the 1987 Philippine Constitution. So next, we have here statutory rights. So statutory rights are those rights which are provided by law, okay, promulgated by the lawmaking body, the Congress, and it may be abolished by the body that created them. So statutory rights may be abolished by the Congress. Statutory rights, okay, are an individual's legal rights given to him or her by the government. And these are generally, or statutory rights are generally designed to protect citizens. They are typically enforced by local law enforcement, and their violation usually carries a penalty of legal prosecution and punishment. Best example for statutory rights are employees' statutory rights like payment at or above the national minimum wage. So you as an employee is entitled to receive minimum wage. Otherwise, your employer will violate are labor laws, and you can go directly to the DOLE and NNRC to question the acts of your employer that is in violation of the labor laws. Okay. One another good example of statutory right is paid sick leave, maternity leave, paternity leave, and holiday pay. Okay, that's another good example of a statutory right. And should take note of this. Constitutional rights and statutory rights are sometimes referred to as legal rights. Okay, for board exam purposes, constitutional rights and statutory rights are sometimes referred to as legal rights. Um, Next, classification of rights according to recipient, the receiver. Number one, we have here individual rights. Individual rights are those rights being accorded to the individual. Okay? So individual rights are the rights needed by each individual to pursue their lives and goals without interference from other individuals, including the government. So examples of these rights are the rights to life. Okay, your right to life, your right to liberty, and your right to pursue your happiness. Okay. Then collective rights, also called people's rights or solidarity rights. They are rights of the society as a whole. It's not just for the individual, but for the society as a whole. That's why it's collective. And rights of the society, those that can be injured only in the company of others. So collective rights are the rights not of individual human beings, but of groups. Again, not of individual human beings, but of groups. That's why it's collective. That's why it is also called people's rights or solidarity rights, because they are rights of groups. So the doctrine of collective right holds that a person's rights that are dependent on the group cannot be honored unless the rights of the group as an entity are honored. So examples, it is the right to peaceably assemble. Okay? The right to peace. All of us are entitled to the right of peace. The right to development, the right to self-determination, and the right to a healthy environment. Again, the right to a healthy environment. That's why it's collected. Next, classification of rights to aspect of life. Okay. So according to the aspect of life, we have civil rights. So civil rights are those rights which the law will enforce at the instance of private individuals for the purpose of securing to them the enjoyment of their means of happiness. Civil rights include the ensuring of people's physical and mental integrity, life, and safety, protection from discrimination on grounds such as sex, race, sexual orientation, um, national origin, color, age, political affiliation, including your right to privacy and your right to freedom of thought, speech, religion, press, assembly, and movement, your right to travel. So that's basically your civil rights. So here in the reading material, civil rights include the rights against involuntary servitude. Okay? Voluntary servitude in a sense that you cannot be forced to work for someone, otherwise it will constitute involuntary servitude, involuntary service. No one can tell you to work for me in order to pay your debts. Okay? Because that's involuntary servitude. That's a form of slavery na, and it's against your rights. Then imprisonment for non-payment of debt or poll tax under the Constitution. No person shall be imprisoned for non-payment of debt or poll tax. So if ever you cannot pay your debt, okay, as long as you're honest, okay, and you are not committing deception, uh, you cannot be imprisoned for non-payment of debt. Otherwise, if you'll be committing deceit or abuse of confidence, then you'll be committing estafa, and that's a different story. Now you can be imprisoned, and if you will not pay your poll tax on time, you cannot be imprisoned because the Constitution states that no person shall be imprisoned for non-payment also of poll tax. And then the constitutional rights of the accused, like the right to remain silent, the right to have a competent counsel, etc. Okay, and also your liberty of abode, okay? Your right to have a residence, and also you have the right to change such residence. Okay, so that's an example of your civil rights. Next, political rights. So these are rights which enable us to participate in running the affairs of the government, either directly or indirectly. So in the book, examples of these rights are the right to vote. Every Filipino citizen, as long as you have the qualification and none of the disqualifications, have the right to vote. And also, as a citizen of the Philippines, you have the right to information on matters of public concern. The government cannot withhold such information from you. And also, you have the right to initiative and referendum. So the right to initiative means the power of the people to propose amendments of our constitution, or the power of the people to propose amendments to the 1987 Philippine Constitution, or to propose and enact a legislation through an election for that purpose. And then the referendum, it refers to the power of the citizens to approve or reject a legislation through an election. So if ever Congress will pass a law, and then the citizens will not agree to that, the citizens can ask for a referendum to reject such law. Okay. Next, we have here economic and social rights. So, economic and social rights are those which the law confers upon the people to enable them to achieve social and economic development. So that's why social and economic rights provide protection for the dignity, freedom, and well-being of individuals by guaranteeing state-supported entitlements to education. That's why you have the right to education, the right to have housing, a living wage, the right to receive a living wage, and the right to have a decent working condition, and other social goods. So again, economic rights or social rights includes your right to work, your right to receive a fair wage, or the right to receive a minimum wage provided by law, safe working conditions, and your right to form and join trade unions. Next, cultural rights. So this refers to culture, the customary beliefs, social forms, and material traits of a racial, religious, or social groups. So this protects cultural rights, protects the rights for each person individually and in community with others to develop and express their humanity, their worldview, and the meaning they give to their existence and their development through values, beliefs, convictions, languages, knowledge, and arts, and ways of life. They are also considered as protecting access to cultural heritage, resources, and allow such identification and development processes to take place. So from the word cultural, it refers to culture rights. Okay. Classification of rights according to struggle for recognition. So number one, we have the first generation of rights. So this refers to civil and political rights, okay, which derives primarily from the 17th and 18th centuries reformist theories. It conceives of human rights more in the negative than positive terms. So this refers to negative rights, and it may include civil and political rights such as freedom of speech, your right to life, your right to own a property, freedom from violent crime, protection against being defrauded, your freedom of religion, your right to have a fair trial, and your right not to be enslaved. Okay? So, katuning mga freedom from rights. Okay? Not mga rights to. Um, Second, we have the second generation of rights. This covers economic, social, and cultural rights which find their origin primarily in the socialist tradition. It conceives human rights more in positive terms. Okay? So, positive rights include the right to counsel and the right to protection of person and property. So what's the difference between first generation of rights and the second generation of rights? So first generation of rights is more likely in the negative. Ito mga freedom from rights. Okay? Like freedom from torture, freedom from violence, freedom of speech. Okay? And freedom uh, not to be enslaved by another. In second generation of rights, it's more on the positive. Okay? It refers to positive rights like puro mga right to, ano? If negative, freedom from, but if positive, right to. So right to counsel, right to receive a minimum standard of living, right to due process, right to life, liberty, and property, etc. So that's second generation of rights. And then third generation of rights, it covers collective rights. So the specific rights that are most commonly included within the category of the third generation of rights are the rights to development, because the right to development is not an individual right but a collective right. It is for a group. Then the right to peace also is for a group of individuals, not only the individual himself. The right to a healthy environment. Okay? The right to communication, and humanitarian assistance. Okay, so third generation of right, it covers collective rights. Next, we'll go to according to derogability. So number one, we have here the absolute or non-derogable rights. So absolute or non-derogable rights are those rights which cannot be suspended nor taken away nor restricted even in extreme emergency and even if the government invokes national security. So what do you mean by non-derogable rights? So non-derogable rights are those whose infringement is not justified under any circumstances. And examples of these rights are your right to life in your freedom from torture, inhumane, or degrading treatment. So even if the government invokes national security, these rights, the right to life, in your freedom from torture, inhuman, or degrading uh, treatment cannot be taken away from you. It cannot be taken away nor restricted nor limited. Okay. Next, we have the derogable or can be limited rights. So it may be suspended or restricted or limited depending on the circumstances which call for the preservation of social life. And in order to be valid, it must satisfy three requirements. So it is provided for by law, and it is the law is made known to every citizen. Then there is a state of emergency which necessitates the urgent preservation of public good, public safety, and public moral, and it does not exceed what is strictly necessary to achieve its purpose. So many civil and political rights are derogable. In certain situations, such as a state emergency or when there is invasion or a civil war, these rights may be suspended or restricted. However, suspension of rights may only be made when absolutely necessary, and it must satisfy these three requirements in order for it uh, to be valid. So, example, the right to freely move may be limited through the imposition of curfews. Okay, that is allowed. Your right to freely move may be limited through the imposition of curfews as long as there is a valid ordinance or a law, okay, supporting curfew. Okay, I think that will be all. Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for part 3. Thank you and have a great weekend.